All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to CSM Mastermind. My name is Andrew Marks, co-founder of Success Hacker and our Success Coaching Training Program. We are back for our monthly live webcast today discussing career paths in customer success. This free learning event is brought to you by Success Coaching, the world leader in customer success professional development training, with more than 4,000 graduates in more than 60 countries. Our popular virtual instructor-led certification boot camps are now running monthly. Actually, we just certified level 2 now. We're really excited about that. And we've got a couple of new virtual instructor-led courses with outcome-based selling for customer success and data-driven decision-making for customer success, which have already received very high marks. And we're expecting the same for our upcoming change management for customer success instructor-led course. So you can find out more at successcoaching.co. Ashley will be sure to drop that in the chat window for you. For those of you who haven't participated in one of these events before, this is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic relevant to customer success. This right here is the only script that I follow during the entire hour. Regardless of the company you work for, the details of your customer-facing role, or the size of the customers that you deal with, we aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to you. We also encourage you to suggest topics that you'd like to hear about. So if you have a suggestion, please direct message me on LinkedIn. The schedule for our upcoming CSM Mastermind events, along with a whole bunch of other resources, can be found at successcoaching.co. So please check that out. And we will post a replay of this webinar along with a transcription early next week on our website. Now, there's a lot of thought leadership out there, along with a lot of theories about how to deliver customer success. This series allows us to focus on the practical and give you real-world advice, tips, techniques, and shared experiences from those out in the wild that are practicing customer success on a daily basis. To do that, we invite 3 panelists from the customer success community to join me for a roundtable discussion. These are people that have been recommended to us as being great at their craft. And in this case, all 3 of them I know and have some experience with personally. And so we asked them to share their experiences and perspectives. We will be taking questions later during the webcast, so please use that Q&A functionality found at the bottom of your screen to ask or upvote a question. Now, I'm very excited to welcome our panel for today, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Let's get started with Ashley. Why don't you introduce yourself? And given the topic, can you share a bit about your journey through customer success?
Absolutely. So, hey, everybody, my name is Ashley McElwain. Right now, I'm a customer success operations manager for a large company called Essity. They're a more traditional product manufacturing type company, and we're developing solutions and services stream within that company. I actually came into customer success a little by accident. I was working sort of with a hand in a lot of different functions within a product, SaaS product organization, and really the need for customer success developed. Therefore, we developed customer success. Granted, that was back before we called it that, but really kind of came into it organically through recognizing the need. So that's a little bit about my journey.
Excellent. Thanks, Ashley. Dave, you're up.
Yeah, hello everyone. I am Dave Ginsberg. I am the Chief Customer Officer at Workboard. Workboard is a Silicon Valley startup that has an OKR platform, which really helps our enterprise customers bridge the gap between their strategy and executing on their strategy. In terms of my journey, I really started off in consulting. So I worked for some large consultancies for the beginning of my career. And that really had me get that passion for working with customers to help them get to some sort of desired result or outcome. And from there, got more into e-commerce, more industry, leading up account teams, working directly with customers, helping them actually get to a financial metric or some sort of KPI they were driving for. And then really within the last 8 or 10 years, transitioned exclusively into SaaS. So worked for some large, well-known SaaS companies, which I think is just a fantastic model for what customer success can bring to the table in terms of growth and retention and really brand building. So that's been the journey for me.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. And last but not least, Michael.
Hey folks, Michael Redward. Nowadays, I run operations at a startup called SaaSworks. And at SaaSworks, we are really on a mission to help scaling subscription businesses perfect their net revenue retention. Before SaaSworks, I spent the 2010s at a company called HubSpot. Joined there as a CS individual contributor, eventually built and ran the CS organization from support through operations, renewals, customer success, global, and the rest of it. It was an awesome ride, and we learned a ton about customer success and how to promote both our customers' outcomes and our teams. I'm thrilled to share some of that today with y'all.
Excellent. God, I choked up on that, Michael. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all for sharing a bit about your journey as well. So let's get to the topic for today. November happens to be National Career Development Month. So naturally, our topic today is about customer success career paths. Depending on your preferences and your ambitions, a career in customer success offers many opportunities to grow professionally. You can move into management. That's always an option. You can focus on specializing in a specific operational domain, such as onboarding enablement or account management, or like in Ashley's case, operations in general. With a heavy focus on the customer and their desired outcomes, customer success can also lead to product management, marketing, sales, operation, COO type of thing, especially with customer-driven companies. I think it's important to talk about this from both the individual perspective as well as that of a leader with team members that have career aspirations. So just to get started, what do you say to people that are thinking about a career in customer success or just getting started in customer success from a career perspective?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So I guess the advice I would give is grounded in the acceptance of what I think is a fact, which is the value of spending time with customers is, as you point out, Andrew, incredibly transferable. So anyone that can have the opportunity to get direct connection and to understand the needs, the pain, the glory, the drama that customers have in dealing with your product or solution really affords you an incredible breadth of opportunities in almost any area that you wish. And I know you're interested, Andrew, on people entering customer success, but what I often believe is people who have spent time in customer success have the opportunity to really leverage those learnings and those perspectives in product, in engineering, in marketing, in sales, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think entering the discipline with that mindset of sponging that up and finding ways to really be that voice of the customer internally as well as externally is kind of as good as it gets to really having some value for our customers.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dave. And to build on that, if you think about all of those general skill sets that you can really develop in customer success roles, that really speaks to where you can come from into a customer success role as well. So I know on the teams that I've worked on alone, we've had people coming in from finance, we've had people coming in from customer service, we've had people coming in from account management type roles. I think to paraphrase a definition of customer success that I heard a number of years ago, I think it was the Customer Success Association. Like it's an integration of all of the functions that we already know, right? It's marketing, it's sales, it's training, it's support, it's all of those things. So just as you have so many different pathways to go out into from customer success, I think you can come into it from so many different places too.
The analogy I always really liked is that, working with customers is like the liberal arts degree of the business world in many ways, right? It's, for folks that maybe haven't done it, they don't quite get it, but it's a tremendous jumping off point, and it builds a set of really, really transferable skills in the same way a liberal arts degree would give you, a sense of critical thinking and problem solving, and et cetera. working with customers is going to give you, skills around active listening and communication and problem solving and all that. And so I think the comments on transferability are really good. I think if you think of customer success as that liberal arts kind of foundation, to make the analogy, you can begin to see how you can carve a path from there to just about anywhere.
Yeah, it's a great feeder. It's a great feeder into other organizations, and to your point, Ashley, it's a collector from different organizations as well. I mean, there's things I can't really think of maybe save a legal team. Although I have seen, actually, I take that back. I have a couple of legal clients that have taken people that had JDs and turned that into customer success. I'm having a hard time thinking about anybody in any role that can't take that understanding, that knowledge, that experience, and leverage it in customer success or vice versa.
Yeah, and then further growth. So sorry, Dave.
Oh no, I'm sorry. It's always a little awkward on Zoom, like who's talking. But I think too that tees up one of the big challenges of customer success, in that it does mean so many different things to so many different organizations, and as Michael said, really pulls from this whole broad swath of skills that are very applicable to the function. And so while in some ways it's a huge benefit that we have that diversity of experience and skill set, it also can make it really hard in cutting through some of the noise on what makes a really excellent CSM in many ways. So many of us are hiring, right? And looking at resumes, you see CSM, and yet you have to take that with a big grain of salt at times. Like, what does that mean? And I don't know if there are many functions that you could say that about out there, right? If you're hiring an engineer, I think you could get to it. A performance marketer, you could get to it pretty quickly. Customer success, not so much, in my opinion.
So what is a great CSM then? You teed it up, David. What's a great CSM from your perspective? I'm going to ask all of you this.
Okay. So I love the point on critical thinking. I think that's amazing. I think that problem solving, I think more and more really being able to marry a data-driven, more quant perspective with a qualitative perspective, and doing that in a way that gives you a more holistic insight in terms of what's happening for the customer. So I can tell you when we hire, depending on the level, that problem solving is massively important. Can never be too strong a communicator, both written and in terms of presentation skills and all of that. And then I think really being able to juggle. I mean, time management and being able to figure out quickly where to put energy and what's important to customers. And then the very last thing, and maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I think the consulting background plays very well to the function, because if nothing else, it trains you to ask the right questions in a way that maybe gets to an issue that if you didn't ask the right questions, you wouldn't get to as quickly, or at all. So I think those are the attributes, at least what I look for.
And part of that consulting is also the listening piece of that as well. That's big.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. What about you, Ashley? What are your thoughts on that? What do you think is the ideal CSM?
Yeah, I mean, so this is especially pertinent to me because, like I said, I came from a place where I didn't have CS necessarily on my resume. We were doing customer success by a different name. So it's an interesting thing when you're hiring for customer success. What are you looking for? Are you looking for somebody who had the customer success title, or are you looking for someone who had the core tenets of what makes a good customer success manager? And in my mind, probably the most important of those, regardless of what type of product you're supporting or what type of organization you're in, are the sort of focus on behavioral change, right? Change management, being able to put yourself in the customer's shoes so that you can better understand what their needs are, so that you can then drive that change towards greater adoption or, internalization of your product or your services or whatever it is you're selling. I think that probably from my perspective, then the strongest skill set they can have is driving that behavior change and being very creative in that.
Michael,
I think you did a good job of kind of highlighting a lot of the skills and the experience that you look for. So I'll highlight something a little bit different. It's more on the traits side, so things that are harder to teach, if you will. Like I think, with good leadership and a good training department at the company you're at, you can learn better time management. It's possible, right? That's a skill. It's learnable. So what's not learnable that makes great CSMing? And I would say there's probably about three things. One, and this is hard to teach, is just empathy. You actually have to care. You can't just say you care. You actually have to walk the walk, and you have to feel it, kind of in your core. And there's a variety of ways that as a hiring manager, you can kind of test for that. I won't really get into it, but it's something you get a sense of when you talk to a candidate. So empathy, number one. Number two, and this is sometimes in a counterbalance with empathy, is outcome orientation, right? Like, as CSMs, the business relies on you to produce a business outcome. You're not just there for fun, right? And so your ability to turn the corner in a negotiation, to identify the upsell opportunity, to claw the customer back from the depths of churn, right? You need to be able to apply that pressure in the right way. Inside there are some sales skills and other negotiation, et cetera, but I don't think you can really teach outcome orientation. That's something that I've always really looked for keenly in a CSM. And then third is the, how do I put this? Kind of the domain problem solving expertise. Like, if you're going to be a CSM at a MarTech company, your brain needs to be able to work in like how a marketing funnel works, right? Or if you're going to be a CSM at a hardware company, your brain needs to work in a way that kind of leads you to understand devices and hardware technology, right? And so I think those three things are the traits that I tend to look for. And I kind of, take a sort of broad brush to it, that everything else can be taught. It's great if you have them, but those are the traits that I would encourage folks to look within themselves and see if they actually have, because that's what's going to make you a great fit for CSMing on the long term.
That makes a really good point, Michael. And it actually made me think of something else that I think is really important too, that I think is hard, not impossible to teach. And that's emotional intelligence. EI is so important for a customer success manager. You're going to be in difficult positions, right? The one great thing about customer success is we exist because customers aren't always happy. And sometimes you're on the receiving end of that. And that can be really difficult. It can be really stressful. I think CS is a position that has a high burnout rate. It can be really, really hard to put yourself in that empathetic position for a long time, constantly. It reminds me a lot of my past life in healthcare, right? It's so fulfilling, but it's also really emotionally draining. So I think being prepared for that, being prepared to take care of yourself, and as a hiring manager, being prepared to take care of your CSMs too is really important.
It's funny you put it that way. Every coaching cohort that I do, one of the things I sign off with is make sure you're taking care of yourself, right? Make sure because this is an emotionally and mentally draining job. And in order for you to take care of your customers, more importantly, in order for you to take care of your family and people close to you, you need to spend some time on yourself, whether that's going out and taking a walk every day, that's spending some time doing some meditation, whatever, especially now in this age of COVID when we are being separated from the people we care about. It's so important to be emotionally healthy. But I love that whole EQ thing. People in customer success, if you're in this job, you've got to have some decent levels of EQ, because there is a lot of empathy that you're doling out. You need to have self-awareness and self-control, because you've got things coming at you constantly. One thing I do want to comment on, though, is Michael, the domain problem solving. I think that there's nothing that takes the place of domain experience. 100% agree with you. Some of the best CSMs that I've experienced are people, for their particular solution that they are providing success for, are people who come out of that role. And so domain experience is a great thing. But I think you can, that doesn't mean, though, that I don't think you can be successful, without coming out of a role. And you can be taught some of that. Is it going to be ideal? It's not ideal. It's not the same as, as somebody coming out of a finance department and being a CSM for a budgeting, forecasting, and planning tool, which is somebody that I personally know that's done that. And that individual freaking just knocked it out of the park as a CSM. But that doesn't mean that his peers who didn't come out of that role could be successful as well.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, Andrew, especially considering I just mentioned my past life in healthcare. The company I work for now basically is a manufacturer of toilet paper. The service that we work with primarily is IoT technology for how to clean large facilities more efficiently, right? I came into that with absolutely no background in that at all. I came from legit like healthcare, right? Like I did clinical healthcare jobs over the years. I ended up somewhere in healthcare software, and that's how I got here. But that is, I think, still learnable. You can still really excel in customer success, even if you're jumping into an arena that you have no experience in. Is it easier to make that transition if you do? Absolutely. Are there certain things I think you have to have a certain level of insight into? I think if I were trying to make that jump backwards from this industry into healthcare, I think that would have been a lot more challenging. I think certain industries pose a greater barrier to entry in that regard. So,
I think it's
toilet paper's hot right now. Toilet paper's like gold. It's like Bitcoin. It's
Right.
We make hand sanitizer too. So we'll.
Oh, there you go. You got the market cornered. I got to invest in Essity.
I think it's really about the capacity and the platform to learn, right? And so, when you think about domain expertise, it's really a bonus, but the capacity and the platform and the capability to learn the domain expertise, right? That's kind of the critical thing that I think you've got to have. And I think that's a lot about, I see a couple questions in the Q&A about highlighting, different talents to recruiters, et cetera. A lot of that is about packaging and understanding how to communicate those skills you have. So, for instance, working in healthcare, that gives you a really, really good sense of like system structure, right? And there's a lot of complexity in there. Managing like IoT for large facilities, also systems, also a lot of complexity. So the platform there is the ability to manage complexity. And then, you were very successful in making that transition on the same platform. So I think also when you communicate that to recruiters, like Paul's asking, it's really critical to be able to talk in an abstracted enough sense, be like, I handle complexity in this way. And if I were to work for you, I would be successful again.
Yeah, it's a great point.
Yeah,
Sorry, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Andrew, I think it also points to a bit of the career trajectory within the customer success discipline, right? So oftentimes as you become, a senior CSM, an enterprise CSM, whatever your path may be, you have less customers. And so the time that you're spending on customers is certainly beyond the expertise of the product or solution or technology that was purchased, but really understanding the problem that the customers are trying to solve with your solution. And that domain acumen is incredibly helpful. I mean, I can tell you customers that rave about individual CSMs, it's far beyond their responsiveness or their ability to follow up or something like, and more, this person really gave me advice or a thoughtful perspective that I did not have, maybe beyond the actual solution, but more about how this can be helpful in solving a problem that I talked to them about very early in our relationship. And they knew that with new feature and functionality releases, this was very relevant to me. And they went through the thought process of, not only is this relevant, but this is how it could save me time or lead to a better outcome or output. And I think that's a level of sophistication of the best CSMs out there, the most senior, the most sophisticated out there, that customers look at that CSM as a differentiator. And they look at something that they really value in working with you. And so that we should never underappreciate. I think that's massive. Now, hard to do at scale, and obviously more relevant to certain industries. But when done right, I think that that's what really makes CSM valued by customers.
Being able to connect the dots between what you can offer them as a solution and what they need, whether they know it or not. Right?
That's right.
It's not just about you heard it. It's, hey, I understand your business so well that I thought of this. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So, and we've got a number of questions here. I want to get to those in a moment, but so we talked about this, from a individual contributor. I've got some career aspirations here. The skills that I'm, some of the things I need to think about. From a leader perspective, how do you approach a situation where you have people that want to that have a career path goal that may be in customer success or outside of customer success, right? How do you deal with that? How do you support it?
I think one of the most important things to do, and this kind of goes back to the burnout discussion we had a little bit earlier, which is like, if you have a CSM that really is excelling and has those career aspirations, one of the best things you can do as a manager is constantly be talking to them about what those aspirations are, right? Make sure that they understand that they're heard, that you know where they want to go. You're sort of coaching and guiding them if they aren't 100% sure they know where they want to go, but they have an idea or a direction they want to take. Because in my mind, that's something you can really do to counter that burnout, right? That can be a very rejuvenating process to have that type of a discussion with your manager. So just wanted to call that out.
Folks that are in that spot, right? I think we've all been there, where you're in a role and you're like, oh boy, this is, a year from now, if I'm still doing this, I've done something wrong, or I'm not going to be able to continue doing it due to burnout or whatever else. And you're looking to make the move. I think I would just say two things. One is, even if you're in a role that feels like it's taxing, you do not want to run from something. You want to run to something, right? So you should not move out of customer success management and into product, because product is not customer success management. That's the wrong thing. And also, that's not a path where you're going to compete favorably with other product management candidates, because it's just going to be so clear that you're running from something, not to something. So I think even when it gets hard, it's important to keep your head up and figure out what do you want to do that would be more energizing and be where you want to be, and to make that decision mindfully, right, as opposed to sort of reactively. That's number one, is being mindful and running to something. Number two is, as you think about where you want to build your career to, whether it's leadership or product, or as Dave was saying, working with bigger customers and kind of climbing the CSMing food chain, if you will, to enterprise and key accounts. I think that you get a lot of experience, and we talked about this earlier. I use the analogy of the liberal arts degree of business. You get a ton of experience that's really, really useful as a CSM. But I think the way you package that and understand, what do I have today? What do I need to layer in there? And then how does that complete package match the skills that my desired role need? That's really important. So if we're looking at product, for instance, product managers spend a ton of time talking to customers. However, those conversations are really different in a material sense than what you do as a CSM. So as a CSM, you're good at conversation, you're good at asking probing questions, et cetera. You might not be good at understanding like usability. You might not be good at understanding design patterns and UX. So understanding, I have this, I need to layer this in to get to the role that I want. I think that kind of almost procedural thinking is really, really important in getting to where you want to go.
And I also think it's important that you think that way. You have to be the one that creates that narrative. You can't just sit there and apply for a job, throw a resume out there, and just say, "Oh, they're going to see it on my resume." You need to create that narrative, right? So I want to be explicit about that. You need to be the one. If you're the one looking for that role, whether it's inside customer success or outside of customer success, you need to have that narrative. And the way you talk to the recruiters, the way you talk to the manager, the management, the way you write your cover letter, and the way you word things on your resume.
Yeah. No, I think that's right. And I think if we're willing to be incredibly honest, the hardest part for many of us, I'll certainly throw myself in that camp, is trying to figure out where you actually want to land, right? And that's really only a decision that you can make for yourself. And so if your passion, if where you get air is not with the customer and spending time with the customer and advocating and understanding, and I love the word empathy that Ashley used. Like, if that's not where you get your energy, like, do not go into customer success, like, full stop. So understanding where you don't want to be may be equally as important as where you do want to be. Unfortunately, I think you need to kind of decide where you want to land. And, you know, you could spend years and years and decades trying to crack that code. Like, I get that. I think the question is, can you just move closer to that direction? Because as someone much wiser than I, you know, said, like, if you don't define that destination for yourself, someone else is going to define it for you, right? And so I think customer success, that holds true. Now, the advantage, as we've talked about, is that you have such exposure to a lot of different things and have a seat at the table in a bevy of conversations that I would argue you actually have the ability to get to that place, at least a place of understanding of what really gives you that passion point, maybe more quickly than a lot of other industries, a lot of other functions, because you get that exposure, right? And so I think that's incredibly valuable, but you really do have to define that for yourself. Someone else doing it for you is rarely going to work out.
No, it's not going to play out well.
And Dave, I would say think openly and be critical of yourself while you're thinking about how to make those decisions. So a little bit of a personal experience for me, leaving healthcare and coming into customer success, I was really concerned that I would miss my patients and I would miss feeling like I had an immediate direct impact on their well-being that day, right? And I found that concern was a little bit unfounded, because as soon as I got into customer success and started building some traction in customer success, I realized I was doing the same thing, right? I was making their lives better. I was doing something that improved their day to day, or, you know, took something off of their plate or whatever it might be. And then I found myself moving into operations having that same concern, right? You said something that really struck me, is like, if you're someone who gets air from being in front of customers, make sure that you're putting yourself in front of customers. And I was so afraid that moving into a more operational role that I would lose my air, right? But what I found is I was, again, worried for no reason, because what I'm doing is supporting so many of the other CSMs in our organization and then directly impacting what our customers interact with every day, that I still get to feel like I'm making that impact, even if it's in a different mode of interaction. And I think that's super poignant now, especially with all of us being on Zoom and not seeing anyone in person. And think about different ways you might be able to get that same fulfillment, even if it's not super traditional to what you think of.
That's your high EQ kicking in there.
No.
What that is. All right, let's go through some of these questions. Ashton, thanks for the question. Ashton asks, a common question you see is, how do I get to a leadership role? A customer success director or VP position. If I've been an individual contributor, CSM, or team lead, what steps do I take to take my skill set to the next level?
I'll throw something out there on this one. When you look at any management role for any function, right? It's important to understand like what that function is. So if you think about a CSM manager or a CS director or an engineering manager or an engineering director, right? It's important that that manager or that director has a good sense of the work that's happening at the individual contributor level. One way to get that good sense is to have been in seat for a while. Cool. I think there's a different skill set though that managers, and even further different for directors or VPs, that you need to, I'll use the analogy again, layer in, right? And so, when you think about making that move from an individual contributor to a manager, you'd be a little misguided to think about that move as just the next step. No, it's a side step, right? And what you're going to need is to pick up additional skills. And a lot of those have to do with communication and business thinking and operations and process for many companies. But I think take a look at that role you want, understand what they're actually hiring for. Like look with a critical eye at the job description and compare that to kind of the job description where you are today. Maybe map it out, in a Venn diagram or something like that if it helps you. But understand that move is not just a step up. It's actually a different career path management is, right? And I think in a lot of ways, the engineering manager and the CS manager have more in common than the CSM and the CS manager, because the skill set is management, right? And if you think about it that way, then perhaps it becomes easier to identify, okay, what's the management skill set I need to layer in to my experience as a CSM to make that leap?
100% agree with that, Michael. And I think to build on that, I would challenge anybody who sees themselves moving to that management role. Make sure you're not running to that because you think it's just the next step. I had to have this conversation with myself recently, right? Like, do I want to be in a position where I'm managing other people? Or is what is important to me having impact on things like strategy and, those types of things? You can have those types of impacts and move into those roles without being a direct supervisor to other people. So really know what you're looking for and make sure that you're seeking the right role for the things that you're really looking for.
I think that point both of you has made is right on about the next step, not necessarily being a manager. I mean, we all know the stories of great ICs who went on and you lost a great IC and they became a crappy manager, right? And so like kind of the org loses and a lot of people become crappy managers because they didn't really want to be a manager, but they thought that was their play, right? That's how they got to the next step. So I would just caution, like, don't confuse management with leadership, right? And my advice is be the go-to person. Be the person that people seek out to get a point of view on something. Or I know you have a good mental model on how to deal with this particular challenge or problem. If you have a personal brand that you make time to do that, you do it thoughtfully, you put the organization or the team before yourself, I think in essence, you are becoming that impact influencer that Ashley just mentioned, and you are becoming that individual that is seen as a leader, whether they have the title or whatever. That will come, I would argue, pretty organically, because whenever the promotion comes up, if it's a slam dunk, it's a slam dunk. Mm-hmm. If it's you need to make excuses to advocate why someone should be promoted, they've been here X amount of time and blah blah blah. That isn't the right mentality, I would argue. So I would put yourself out there to be the person that really takes interest in others and the problems they're facing and lends something to that. That's the clearest, most direct way, I think, to positioning yourself for that leadership opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Dave. You don't become a leader by getting a title slapped on your LinkedIn profile, right? You need to get there. You need to earn it. So, great. Thanks, Ashton. Appreciate the question. Our next question that has been voted up a number of times by Rebecca. Does anyone on the panel have certifications? If so, have they helped you move up in your career? Okay, Ashley, you put your hand up first. Talk to us about your certifications.
So I'm certified with Success Hacker. Yeah. I've actually, one of the leadership actions I was taking before I was in the operations role was trying to drive some of that for the rest of the team as well. So I had participated in a few of these modules and certification courses and really kind of tried to push that to get the rest of our team. I think it does an amazing job of level setting for skills because we do have so many people coming from so many different functions, right? And they come in with strengths and weaknesses in a lot of those skills. And one of the pitfalls, which is, just as much a strength of customer success, is that you need to be good at all those things, right? It just also makes it tough to already have that foundation be super strong. So I think these certifications obviously really drive towards that. My personal favorite was the change management, just saying. but love that one.
Thank
I
you.
think every customer success manager should do it, even if you're already really good at this.
Yeah.
It will remind you, it will re-ground you and bring you back to the core things that you know are true. Maybe you just need a little reminder.
So, by the way, that was not a paid placement. So just
Nope.
letting you all know that was not.
Right.
I didn't text her and say, "Hey, you got to answer this question."
Right.
So always nice to hear that.
We've also looked to have some of our sales folks engage with the customer success certifications as well, in terms of having them better understand customer success so that we can have better relationships with our sales. And our leadership actually participated as well, because I think it's just as important for someone who is managing a customer success team to understand those core components as the people who are actually individual contributors. So.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. Michael, Dave, do you have any certifications that you've gotten that have helped you move up in your career? Anything jump out at you?
You want to jump into that, Michael?
Yeah, I mean, my simple answer, do I have any certifications? Like, man, I wish I did. I'll comment that my customer success journey or whatever, right, sort of started in 2010. I don't think people really use the phrase customer success. I think the phrase was first uttered at a Salesforce offsite in like 2006 or something like that. But it was not an industry that we understood at all. We called it account management or implementation or some of the other like pieces that tend to make up what we think of as a customer success org today. And the concept of customer success management as like a key business function to producing like, good valuations, we totally hadn't thought about. So I think the 2010s was kind of a formative period for customer success in the industry, just kind of timeline wise. Then if I think ahead, the 2020s ought to be the right time for the industry to settle down on what the skills are and for certifications to start mattering more. So I mean, Rebecca and the folks that were interested in this question, like I personally don't, but if I was in the same place in 2020 as I was in 2010, I would go get some certifications because like, I think we know what's up with customer success now. And like, there's people paying attention and offering certifications that like, it should be repeatable and you should be able to skip the line a little bit. You don't have to learn it the hard way. Like maybe folks did last decade.
Yeah, I think that's right on. I think it's timing, as Michael said. So I think of it a little bit akin to like PMP, or Project Management Professional Certification, back in whenever that started up, early 2000s or maybe before, I can't recall. But like the idea that it's a discipline that has core skills that people have put in the work experience and the classroom learning experience, have met basic criteria. It's just a differentiator. I think, especially for people that are transitioning into CSM role, if nothing else, it shows you have a passion. It shows that you have an interest, you're willing to put in the time, and makes it a lot easier for the hiring manager to say, you know what, this isn't as big as a risk as maybe it would have been, because they don't have the years of experience before, but clearly they understand and have gone through. And so I think it is a differentiation. I don't know if it's the end all be all, but it certainly makes the hiring decision easier when you're, on the fence, if you're on the fence with someone. So I'm a fan. I definitely see there being value, but I'm with Michael. It's probably more important now than maybe it used to be. And I think it'll become sharper in the years to come.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Thanks, Dave. Thank you, Rebecca, for the question. Once again, not a paid placement. Evan asks, what are the different types of roles within CS? There's a lot. It's one of those it depends questions too, right?
Maybe I can jump on this one because I helped build an org that started with one or two functions and ended up with like all sorts.
You had a bunch of heroes, right? Basically doing everything, right? Which is where it starts.
I think that there's when you think about the different types of roles, right? If you looked across the industry, you could do some pattern matching. You'd say, there's lots of implementation folks, there's lots of CSMs, there's some tech touch CSMs, there's like some customer marketers, there's some ops folks. You could do that pattern recognition. And like that probably is worthy of its own webinar for what it's worth. I think if you're in a company today, right, or you're thinking about joining a company, it's easier to look at this on a unit of one and look at just one business and ask yourself, where are they at in their CS maturation process? Because when that business was really small, it was probably just the founders talking to customers. Then they hired their first person, to use Andrew's word, it was just a hero, like do all the things, right? They set up new customers, they did support tickets, they did renewals, they did all the things that the customer lifecycle required for that particular business. And that last piece is really, really important for that particular business. Not every business requires implementation. Not every business has annual contracts and requires renewals. Not every business requires an upsell component because maybe their product doesn't have anything else to sell. So I think, like, Evan and Christina, who asked a pretty similar question, like, you can look at where you're at in the business today. And then if you drag the timeline forward, there probably will be specific functions for like every specific thing in the customer lifecycle. You look at very, very large enterprises, they have, hundreds of teams that comprise their customer success board. You look at a mid-sized company, maybe raised a Series D or something, they're going to have fewer, right? It's all on the same timeline. And then just the mitosis and the creation of individual functions will follow the sort of commercial relationship and the product necessities, right? So you start with that hero and you end up with this like insanely complicated org chart. Understanding where you're at in that journey can help you understand perhaps what your next step could be, or help you predict like what might the business want to break off next, specialize in, and turn into a really effective function for customers.
Yeah, I think one of the best things we did as an organization was engage in one of those maturity assessments, right? It was a little bit tough, right? But we really picked apart what we were doing well, where we needed to improve, and where we needed to focus based on our overall organizational strategy too, because that's important. And that really led to the organic development of the parts of the organization that needed to happen. Like you said, Michael, it can happen quickly, it can happen slowly, but the thing is that you understand your maturity, you understand your organizational direction, and that's where you're going. I would highly recommend going out, seeking out one of the professional services companies that can come in and help you do, from an outside perspective, an organizational maturity assessment. It was extremely valuable for us and for me personally, because it led to the development of a customer success ops organization within our business. And hey, high new role. So it was great.
And I think what's important there is that it's an outside perspective.
Yes.
Because we get so inundated with what we're doing on a day-to-day basis, we can't see the forest for the trees. We don't see things clearly when we're looking at it from within our four walls.
Yeah. I think one of the strongest things we had was that we had the outside component, but it was also a company we had worked with in the past that really truly understood our business.
Yeah,
so they had been successing us, right? Yeah. And that mixture, really, really worked well. So
good. Dave, anything else to add to Michael? I love the way Michael laid that whole thing out. There's a really,
I think they nailed it. Maturity model, customer journey driven functions, all good.
Yeah. Thank you, Michael, Ashley. Thank you, Evan and Christina, for those questions. Okay. Next one is from Christian. Thank you, Christian, for being here and asking this. What advice would you give someone without SaaS experience? It feels that most companies are looking for a technical background and pass on candidates that come from non-traditional backgrounds. I actually have a I want to weigh in on this, Christian, really quick. Regard whether you have SaaS experience or not, I think your narrative and what you should be focusing on is something that you do have experience with, some sort of domain expertise. So, like what Michael said before about domain problem solving, right? You might not have that experience with that particular platform. Or experience with any SaaS platform, but if you come to the table with experience in the domain, that can help you get your foot in the door.
And I think communicating your skills in a way that's a little bit less traditional, right? When you think about how you're writing your resume and how you're answering questions in interviews and things like that, focus on the skills that they may not even think of when they're thinking of what they want in a customer success manager. So you're right. They may be a little bit dismissive at first because they don't see that you've worked in SaaS. Really bring the focus to the things those more soft skills that you have developed that really would make you a great CSM.
Yeah, like Michael said, we got to create that narrative, right? We got to create that, and we need to do that. Don't expect them to connect the dots. Connect it for them.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you a super quick story. Something I learned. I was working for a SaaS company, Box, kind of on the IPO train, and we had a great support team there. Truly amazing, technical, product-driven support team, and we kind of stumbled on two untraditional roles that turned out to be some of the best talent in that team. One was teachers, people who had an education background that had 100%. The patience and just like the commute, like just amazing.
Yeah.
And the other was researchers for, like, I remember specifically like biotech academic research. And so folks that were in academic research and then for whatever reason decide they had no tech experience, certainly no SaaS experience. And the individual, I remember when we hired her, we're like, I don't know, she's great, but like, and she was outperforming people who had been in that role for years and years and years. And then we said, do you know anybody else who was in your program that would be interested? And so we hired another person who then outperformed everybody else as well. So we kind of just lucked into these untraditional backgrounds. So I think Ashley's point is so well spoken of figure out what those skills are and then how your passion and or experience, even if it's not directly linked, could tie in to that. And don't be embarrassed or shy away or hide it. I would argue do the complete opposite. Put it front and center and scream it out at the top of your lungs. Here's why my background is sensationally relevant and impactful to the role. And it's a little bold, but we all know when it comes to interviewing, you need to be a little bit bold, right? So I just think that there's a lot of opportunity to leverage diverse experiences for customer success roles.
Yeah, and I think if you're not your own champion, there's a good chance no one else will be. So just own it. Confidence is a really key skill for a customer success manager. So go with it.
That's true.
Hey, Christian, in that question, you used the phrase non-traditional backgrounds, right? I think translating it and, coming up through narrative, totally, yes. I would ask yourself, are you applying to non-traditional CSM teams? Or are you going after the big names that are kind of the industry standard and are traditional or conventional, let's at least say, CSM teams? Because, they're going to look for traditional backgrounds. So perhaps what you want to do is find something that, is a little less kind of sassy, right? And a little bit more of a subscription business as opposed to a software as a service subscription business. Or maybe you're looking for that CSM team that is kind of up and coming and trying to build itself out and is deliberately looking for a diversity of backgrounds. I think when you go knock on the door of, I don't know, just pick on a big company like Cisco, right? They're going to look for traditional backgrounds because they're a big old customer success team and they're running a big operation. And I just think it's a different world than applying to be the second CSM at a scaling company and being able to add in sort of your special touch to that org. They're going to be looking to take more risks because they're looking to punch up against the big guys too. So if you feel like you have a non-traditional background, you might want to match that to a non-traditional org.
That's a great.
Admittedly, you might have greater than career path options ahead of you too. If you're getting in that early, in a large organization, you may really only have that path to management, and maybe that's not your goal. So you really may open a lot more doors for yourself that way too.
Now, that being said, some really large companies, LinkedIn / Microsoft, some of these really big firms have, if you're entry level, you want to get in the ground floor, they'll have really well-developed programs where you can, you can go in there and work your way up. But you're not going to find that in that kind of mid-market or the smaller companies. They're going to expect a certain amount of or they're going to want they're going to expect a certain amount of experience. And once again, part of the effort here is to be your own cheerleader, is to create your own narrative, tell your own story that's compelling enough. but it definitely can be done. I think we got time for maybe one more question. Let's just do Christina's. Actually, you know what, Christine, we already answered the question for you. Let's do Becca. How do you know when you're ready to look for your next role? What are some signs that it's time to start looking for new roles again? Now, we did talk about how important it was to not be running away from something, right? But I think this is definitely going to be very personal. But where just based off of your experience, each of your experience, would love to get your quick take on where can you was there something that you could pinpoint? Said, I think it's time for me to find something different, whether it's inside the company or external to it.
So I think for me, the way that I've always approached this for any role, customer success or otherwise, is if I've been doing something and I find that I'm particularly passionate about this 20% of the time that I'm spending, or this project that I'm working on, or this set of responsibilities that I have, to the point where I can't wait to get my other stuff done to get back to that, that's when I've always known for myself personally that that's where I want to go, right? I want to investigate this more. I want to be doing more of this. And maybe in 2 years, I change direction again, and that's totally okay. But if I pursue that passion, I pursue that want, that drive to do that thing, I feel like I'm serving myself well. And sometimes that can lead to some really interesting paths.
Yeah. Dave, you had something?
I mean, yeah, for me, I think passion's huge. I also think learning curve is the big one for me, which is if you feel you've reached the point in which you're just learning a whole lot less week over week or month over month, or nothing at all, worst case, right? Then you're probably at the point that even if you're enjoying it, you need to figure out what more you could be doing that will engage you. And my guess is if you're not learning, you're probably not enjoying it that much anyway. I think you get into a real danger zone if you recognize you're not learning much and you just keep going, trudging along. I think the burnout, all the things we talk about, that risk goes up pretty quickly. So yeah. That's when I think it's now there's realities to the business, right? Like I've certainly had people that have said, hey, I'm ready for the next thing. And you look and you realize they started 90 days ago, right? There's a little bit of a disconnect there between business reality and so on. So, there are ways to address that for sure. But I think you have to be a little bit pragmatic about that, but got to balance it.
Okay. Anything to add, Michael? Before we wrap
I'm right
up?
there with Dave. This is a question that it's okay to be selfish on, right? And if you're not learning and you're not challenged, or it's not ticking the boxes that you need, that's the time to do it. So yeah, look at the month over month changes in your own kind of, progression. And when that starts to level out or the slope of it decreases, like that's the time to pick your head up. Excellent.
Well, we're at the end of our hour. I want to thank our guests for joining us today. Thank you, Ashley, David, and Michael for the time. Very much appreciated. Great to see you all again, and hopefully be able to do this again soon. One final note: great CSMs know that they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. And that's why we created this CSM Mastermind series, to harness the knowledge and experience of the community to help improve everyone. So I hope that you got something out of this discussion, and we'll see you at our next event on December 16th, when we'll discuss avoiding escalations when customer issues pop up. No, December is not avoiding customer escalations month. Check out the successcoaching.co website to find out more about that and to sign up. And have a great rest of your day and week. Stay safe and stay healthy, everyone. And remember, take care of yourself. And have a great Thanksgiving, by the way. Hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. Thanks.